This is a series about non-native speakers of English and how the way they speak can be different from the standard North American accent. We look at how to improve consonants and vowels, but just as importantly, we look at the music of English and how rhythm, volume, and pitch can make you a more effective communicator. I'm Phyllis, the Canadian pronunciation coach, and this is Improve Your English. In the second episode with Thais from Sao Paulo, Brazil, she talks about her early years learning English.
So we would have English classes. I was never really good at it until I went to language school when I was 13, around 13. And I finally started understanding the language. Once I started understanding the language, I was curious to know more about it because I always listened to music that were in English. That was my kind of music. I was never a big fan of Brazilian music in general. So because I was really curious about what they were talking about, I did my own research on it. So that's when I started learning more and more the language.
You can hear that challenge again of the Portuguese speaker with the IL sound at the end of the word. I talked about that in the first episode. She pronounces it until, avoiding that L altogether.
Until.
Her vowels are generally pretty good. Yeah, she does little things like the way she says school instead of school. We have a diphthong there, and we add a mini syllable. So we start with nice, tight, round lips for the oo sound, but then we release them into a W and a schwa, followed by the consonant L. School. School. Listen to the difference.
School.
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 You can hear a carryover from the music of Portuguese where she'll stretch out a vowel and lift the volume and pitch on what for us should be an unstressed final syllable. She does it consistently, for example, on the word language. Listen to the way she says it, and then I'll say it with a standard North American accent.
The language.
The language.
The language.
The language.
Now, none of the observations I've made affect intelligibility. So let's move on to rhythm and see how the rhythm of her sentences might affect communication. Early on, she talks about her English classes, and she stretches out the second syllable of classes, putting more or less equal volume and length into both syllables. We would put the stress on the descriptive word, English classes, dropping our voice on the second word and using the schwa to reduce the second syllable, which also softens the word. Then the focus of the sentence becomes very clear. What kind of classes is she taking? English classes.
English classes.
English classes.
English classes.
English classes.
Next, let's hear the sentence about whether she felt she was good at English.
I was never really good at it.
Thais stresses the unimportant pronoun it, giving it more length and volume. She also stresses the wrong syllable in the word never, making it louder, longer, and slightly higher. But I still like the fact that she emphasizes the word because we need to catch negatives. However, she misses the opportunity to properly stress another key word, the adjective good. Never and good. Those are the two most important words in that sentence. We already know that it refers to the English language, so stressing it doesn't help focus our attention. Even if I raise my pitch at the end of the sentence as Thais does, I can still give more volume to the adjective good and a little less to the pronoun it. In fact, you can see the difference in the height of the sound wave that each of us produces on the word good.
I was never really good at it.
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 Having said all this, Thais is really expressive, and you can hear the way she emphasizes key words.
The negative in I was never really good at it. Her age when I was 13. The verbs, I started understanding the language. The adjective, I was curious to know more about it.
She also makes a point of stressing the personal pronoun my kind of music, which is very persuasive because it tells us very clearly that this is the kind of music that appealed to her. Finally, she also stresses the word because I was really curious about it. And this is useful because, and there I stress the conjunction, because it answers that all-important question, why? So we listen. We want her to explain. Even without any adjustments to her consonants and vowels and syllable stress, giving these words greater value by saying them a little louder and longer, she focuses our attention on what she's saying. One last thing. Thais's grammar is actually very good, and she doesn't often make errors, but there is one place where I do want to point out a wrong conjugation.
Because I always listen to music that were in English.
Come to think of it, it's not really about the conjugation, it's more understanding the noun. You see, in English, music is an uncountable noun, so we use the singular verb. We would say, I always listen to music that was in English.
It doesn't really matter insofar as intelligibility is concerned. We understand completely what she's saying anyway, but correcting the mistake would take her English up a notch. Now, let's listen to the whole thing one last time.
So we would have English classes. I was never really good at it until I went to language school when I was 13, around 13. And I finally started understanding the language. Once I started understanding the language, I was curious to know more about it because I always listened to music that were in English. You know, that was my kind of music. I was never a big fan of Brazilian music in general. So because I was really curious about what they were talking about, I did my own research on it. So that's when I started learning more and more the language.
You might have noticed that I've made no comments on the last few lines in the passage you just heard. I'm leaving those for you. If you'd like to share your observations, please just put them in the comments section below. And while you're at it, why don't you tell me where you come from? In the final episode, Thais will talk about learning English at college and in Canada. Until then, I'm Phyllis, the Canadian pronunciation coach. Have a good one.